Hey, welcome. We left talking, well, really starting to talk to Kazuma and to see what he knows and what he needs to tell us and why he's acting strange. So, I'll let you decide since you were falling asleep last time.
So, let's ask him about his dad first.
Alright. Ever since I first met you at Yume, you talked about your dream. Mark my words, Rinosuke. I'll be chosen as a visiting student and make my way to Great Britain someday. Did you know the entire time about what happened to your father here? 16 years ago, when my father left on that exciting trip to Great Britain, I was just a boy. We took a photograph together the day before his departure. It's my last memory of him. But what I remember most about my father is a sense of justice. I left a gentleman called at our family home. He told me that Genshin, my father, had been taken ill in England and passed away. It was Professor Mikotoba, your father, Susato-san. Oh my. Ever since then, the professor was very good to me. He even helped to fund my university education at Yume. I'll be forever in his debt. But nevertheless, I just couldn't bring myself to believe what he told me. Ooh. Then one day a letter arrived at our house from Britain. There was no indication of the sender, so I opened it assuming it was from an old acquaintance of my father. What I read in that letter changed my entire life. What did it say? It said that my father had been a mass murderer, and the writer cursed the Asogi name. Oh no. As a result of that letter, I found out what had been hidden from me all those years. Presumably, the letter was sent from a relative of one of the victims. If whoever it was had been a member of the judiciary, he could have been present at the closed trial. The letter revealed that my father had been sentenced to death, executed for being a killer. I'm so sorry you had to find out that way. I imagine the British government did its very best to silence whoever sent that letter, but someone who knew the truth and couldn't bear the resentment was always going to be a problem. But still, it could have been written by anyone. Why would you believe such a thing? There was a newspaper cutting included with the letter. It was the first I'd ever heard of the professor and his terrible killing spree. Well, what did my father have to say about the letter? I couldn't bring myself to show it to him. What? Why not? Because he deliberately concealed the truth from me by telling me my father was taken by a fatal illness. That couldn't have been easy for him, and he'd done it out of consideration for my feelings. So instead, I showed the letter to Judge Jigoku. To the other visiting student. He faltered for the briefest of moments, but then he just laughed the letter off. But in that moment, I saw it on his face. He was undeniably shocked, shaken momentarily before recovering his poise. A year later, my bereaved mother succumbed to the strain of grief, and she too passed away. That's when I made up my mind that one day, without fail, I would cross the seas to Britain and seek the truth for myself. The truth about my father, Genshin Asogi. And I wouldn't let anyone stand in my way. Oh, Kazuma-sama. Alright, let's...
His disappearance.
Yes. It's been getting on for a year now, since what happened at the SS Buria. We were heading across the oceans from Japan to Great Britain, when a bizarre series of coincidences led to those tragic events. I thought I'd lost my best friend forever. I must have been unconscious for a long time. When I awoke, I was lying on a bed. It was a narrow little room. There was a posy of flowers by the pillow. It took me a little while to realize that I was in the cabin of a ship. I slipped out of the room and headed up onto the deck. Were you already suffering from amnesia at that point? Yes, I didn't know what had happened or where I was. There was just this voice in my head. You have something you have to do, something no one else can know about. Go to Great Britain, your task awaits you there. It was a calling I couldn't ignore and compelled me relentlessly. Out on deck, I saw that I was on a huge steamship and we were docked in a large port. It must have been Hong Kong. Yes, it must have been, presumably just before they were due to carry your body off the ship. I had no idea of the situation, but I did have the feeling that this was in some way my last chance. So I concealed myself among the disembarking passengers and went ashore. Then I disappeared into the crowded streets of that foreign port city, so I could plan my onward journey to Great Britain. Boy, we're finding a lot there. Just under a year ago, with all my past memories lost to me, I was left behind in Hong Kong. Everything was foreign to me, the sights, the sounds, the smells. My head reeled, I was truly at a loss. I realized now that I'd escaped as a dead man, with nothing but the clothes on my back. No money, of course. Oh, how terrifying for you. Luckily, though, I had 2 feathers in my cap. One being your knowledge of English, I suppose? That's right, and on the back of that I was able to pick up some work as a deckhand on a cargo ship. Eventually, after calling at countless ports, I finally arrived in Dover. There must have been some 3 months ago now. Your formidable tenacity of purpose showing itself again. I mean, the man had lost his memory and had literally nothing to his name, but he still managed to make his way to London on the opposite side of the world. Of course, I had no idea why I'd moved heaven and earth to get here at that point. So, how did you end up becoming Lord Von Ziek's apprentice, then? That can only be called an extraordinary stroke of luck, really. You see, I was stopped at the border because I had no papers. They took me straight to Scotland Yard, and by sheer coincidence, Lord Stronghart was there to attend a meeting. That's where the second feather in my cap came into play. Would that have been your knowledge of law? Yes, exactly. Lord Stronghart was curious about an Easterner with intimate knowledge of British law. He took me back with him to the Supreme Court and assigned me to the prosecutor's office. And then 9 days ago, you finally got your memory back after the trial involving Drebber. Yes, I did. Oops. What we learned today in court turned things completely on their head. It was an impressive piece of lawyering, Rinosuke Naruhodo. Yeah, but you called me my learned friend. Lord Von Zieks isn't the Reaper, you know. I almost don't want to believe it myself, but it turns out that Inspector Gregson himself, the victim, was... It's clear that the Inspector was behind the Reaper's activity all along. What? You mean you knew? The real question is, who's been giving orders to the Inspector? Yes, Baroque Von Zieks is the real Reaper. And I know that 10 years ago it was him who decided my father must be a mass murderer and sent him to his grave. No, he was merely seeing that justice was done as the law dictates. He's not to blame. Ultimately, it's people who condemn people. The law is just a tool that they use to do it. And when a man condemns another, he must take responsibility for his actions. Of course he must. But I know for certain that my father would never have taken another man's life. Kazuma. On the contrary, my father's life was taken by the Reaper. Interesting.
Do you have anything you can show him?
Yeah, I was gonna... Maybe this?
Yeah.
There's only one place where defense lawyers and prosecutors should discuss evidence, the courtroom.
Well, there's something that might not be evidence that you can show him?
Yeah, like commemorative photograph. Let's see. I mean, it's possible he says it for everything, but yeah, let's see something that might be... Maybe this? Look, I'm surprised after all that conversation, it's not just over. Okay, well, let's see, we already went here. Are they finished? Is there something new we...
No. Is it?
Yeah, I know we went there, but... What's that? It's just something I was hoping to ask your opinion about, that's all. It's a serious crime for the defense to attempt to extract information from the prosecution by illegal means. He's still acting like he's a prosecutor. That's actually pretty funny.
Objection!
Okay, she's just not in the mood for looking at things. I think we're well past the what-to-dos. You alright? It's rather unusual to find ourselves here in the middle of our investigations. It just occurred to me that I might have forgotten something when we left this morning. Please don't worry, as long as you continue to investigate thoroughly, you won't go far wrong. Yes, of course. This is always here? Apparently so. Okay. So...
Hotel?
Can't even examine, okay. Well, at least he seems to be on the mend. You know, his disguise as Mr. Gossip was really quite masterful, wasn't it? I can't remember anything about it except for the floppy lip. I imagine not even his wife would have recognized him. Perhaps, but did he really have to take it quite so far? Oh, we literally just investigated him. So I feel like, for one of the people we talked to, we haven't presented something. Like, usually, once you've exhausted 4, and we did like 6, really, usually it ends, but... We're in the back of a passage to a steamship, maybe? Let's see... For last, I get to take my revenge.
What'd you present him?
The picture of, Gregson dead. Lord Von Zieg's responsible for your father's death, and he's not the Reaper. He's the defendant and deserving of a fair trial. You mean like the one my father had? It's a closed trial now, too. The conditions are exactly as they were 10 years ago. And even if it ruffles some feathers, I have a plan to show that man for what he really is. Illusion is cool, is he? Okay, does he have any...
Show him a picture of all of you guys together.
I already did.
Um,
Yeah, this one?
yeah.
Yeah, I already did that.
What's that thing that's 2 over to the right?
The crime scene floor plan.
Ah,
I highly doubt he has anything to add.
I didn't realize what that was. Oh, can we go to the autopsy place, Maria Glory?
I think I looked and I couldn't find that. Prosecutor, Mr. Vigil, Fresno.
That's what the governor said, that we should talk to her.
Thing is... You can always tell when they have nothing to add. Like, you just tell by the first statement.
Should we show the autopsy report to Kazuma? And then say we need to talk to Gori?
We could.
Or to Von Zeeks and tell him we should talk to Gori?
What the? It's a scale model of the crime scene. Oh yes, I realized that. Does the prosecution office make a model of the scene for every single case? Apparently so. Sometimes it helps to visualize things better and notice things you hadn't spotted before. Actually, the miniature notice board is my work. Be honest, you enjoyed making that.
Click on the paper that he writes on.
Can't. So I'm not actually sure. Let's see. So you said autopsy. Hey! This came up in the trial, didn't it? As something a little dubious, I mean. The fact that no time of death was recorded on Inspector Gregson's autopsy report. Yes, there were some unexpected turns in the courtroom earlier. The suggestion you came up with certainly took everyone by surprise. The idea that the victim died the previous day at some other location is quite something. Well, considering when the pocket watch had stopped and the scorch marks on the candle, it's certainly a distinct possibility. The evidence and the scene both point to it. To be honest, it bothered me too, so I paid a visit to the autopsy room earlier. The coroner responsible wasn't there, but I got a name. It's Dr. Gori. If it wouldn't trouble you, Kazuma-sama, we'd very much like to speak with the coroner too. Of course, the last thing I want is for anything to be brushed under the carpet. Scotland Yard's autopsy laboratory is behind Lowgate Cemetery. Lowgate Cemetery by Barclay Prison, you mean? You know it, do you? The prison where my father was incarcerated and robbed of his life. Well, thank you. We'll pay a visit to the laboratory later today. Good thinking, hun. Yay! Yes! Reinosuke. I want to thank you. What for? For this. You safeguarded the soul of the Asogi clan. Well, it is a famous sword that's been in your family for generations. My only slight regret is that I never got the chance to draw it before I returned it to you. Karuma is said to have been forged by a master swordsmith during the Sengoku Warring States period. I came from a long lineage of warriors, many of whom were expert swordsmen. Well then, you're a chip off the old block, I'd say. This blade, Karuma, is the symbol of the Asogi clan's honor and might. Apparently one of my father's apprentices even took the blade's name for a surname. Really? Karuma? It does sound formidable, that's for sure. 16 years ago, when my father was a visiting student here in London, he had the sword forever at his side, which is why it means so much to me that I have it by my side again now, too. And that is all thanks to you. It was an honor. Hey, he's smiling again. So I don't know if he's possessed, but he certainly seemed like it for a while.
He's angry now.
Yeah. I mean, he really is all in on the Reaper, on Von Zeeks being the Reaper.
Yeah.
Now I have preparations to make for tomorrow. Perhaps I said a little too much. Kazuma, you've changed. Ah, there we go. Once again, we observe something. No, Reinosuke, I haven't changed at all. It's you who's changed. I can completely understand your resentment of Lord Von Zeeks given what happened. But the fact is, those events in this case are, well, unrelated? Is that what you want to say? How can you be so sure? What do you mean? Never mind, the man is the Reaper, and it's for that reason that the inspector was killed. I'm going to prove as much in court tomorrow, by whatever means necessary. I can't let you do that, Kazuma. I know you'll do what you have to as a lawyer, but I'm sure I don't need to tell you that I won't be taking any prisoners in the courtroom. I would expect nothing less. Until tomorrow, then, in the Old Bailey. Yeah, that was exactly it, hon. God, if I were playing by myself.
Oh, she's redecorated.
Yeah, it looks all purple. So
She's got, like, toys.
This is you, then. This place really is creepy, isn't it? Well, being a dead room, it's probably full of the spirits of the dissected. But actually, there's a rather pleasant scent of roses in the air. Well, being a dead room, the coroner probably needs a bold scent like that to mask the odor of death. Iris, do you think we could change the subject? Poor Susato.
Bonnet.
You hate her bonnet. What? Aww, what was that? Dr. Gory? What? That noise before. I was sharpening my tools. I'd be dead meat if I didn't keep a perfectly keen edge on them. Right. When following the collagen fibers in the dermis, an expertly sharpened scalpel cuts like cheese. Would you like a demonstration? Oh, yes, please. I'd love to see. Then, I think you'll do nicely. Huh? No, I wouldn't do nicely at all. I mean, maybe some other time. Tisk. Was that a tut? Well, we came here to ask questions, so... There we go, time of death. We have actually met before. I'm a lawyer, if you remember. You're not dead yet. What? So Mama said I wasn't to cut you open. She's so strict about things like that. Well, good. Dr. Scythe had some scruples, at least. Oh dear. It looks like she's not interested in talking to us. For the time being, anyway. For the time being? You mean until we die? I hope that's a ways off. Sorry, but I wasn't planning on dying anytime soon. Tisk. Surely there's some less drastic way of making her listen.
You have to show her something?
Apparently. Let's see.
Should we show her the autopsy report?
Yeah, let's just do that. Dr. Gory, we actually came here to ask you about this. He was very good. Good? Sorry? His skin didn't snag my blade once, and very little mess. His joints dislocated easily, and his muscle tissue was a pleasure to work with. We can skip those details. But there's one thing about the report that caught my attention. You don't seem to have recorded the time of death. That's not my fault. Oh, that made me jump. Then please, tell us what happened. There we go. So why doesn't this autopsy report include the victim's time of death, then? It's really the most crucial detail. I was told not Lord Chief Justice, he came here. Witness statements about the gunshot and the other evidence, it was obvious. Van clearly died at 5 p.m. on the 1st of November when the gunshot was heard. But that's not the time of death you wrote in the report. You didn't write anything. Was there some reason you didn't include it? Dr. Gory, if you're hiding something under Lord Strongheart's instructions, then sooner or later you're going to have to go the same way as your mother. Give it here, then. What's she scribbling so furiously? There. You've written... What? What's she written? Tell us. Indeterminate. But... What do you mean by that? Well, how is the time of death indeterminate? When the specimen was brought in, it was still fresh. So the time of death could easily have coincided when the gunshot was heard. But there was one small discrepancy. What discrepancy? There was some fried fish in the pocket of the specimen's overcoat. And that fish had started to rot. What? If the victim liked fried fish, he presumably liked to eat it before it went off. Well, yes, what are you really trying to say? It's possible that someone tried to manipulate the apparent time of death. Manipulate, though? Is that even possible to do? Theoretically, if you were to chill the body at night, you could delay the onset of putrefaction. Or putrefaction, is that it? Putrefaction. Well, that says putrefaction. But maybe it's maybe it's a translation error. If the overcoat wasn't on the body at the time, then only the fish would have started to rot. With today's science, it's not yet possible to determine if the body was chilled or not. But today's science is advanced enough to let you freeze a corpse, it seems. But surely, to chill a corpse like that would require an enormous electrical refrigerator. I don't imagine many households in London are equipped with such a device. No, definitely not, but maybe in a factory or some other special places. I don't recall seeing any factories or such like on Fresno Street, though. I wonder if the inspector's body had been chilled somehow, what might the actual time of death have been? I couldn't say for sure, but at the most, it might have been a day earlier. No. In other words, it would corroborate your previous deduction, Mr. Naruhodo. That Inspector Gregson was killed the day before his body was discovered at a different location. Did you inform Lord Strongheart of this possibility? He simply said that there were no electrical refrigerators of that size in the vicinity. Oh yes, one other thing. It's something the governor of Barclay Prison told us. He said that your mother, Dr. Scythe, was responsible for confirming the death of the professor after his execution. The professor. Apparently you always enjoyed listening to your mother's stories about her work, so we were wondering if you might know something about what happened 10 years ago. That's not all Mama did. Sorry? My Mama carried out the autopsy of Clint von Zieks as well. What? Really? The brother of Lord von Zieks, the professor's final victim. The idea of carrying out an autopsy of a member of the aristocracy was completely unthinkable back then, but the detective in charge of the investigation insisted, and it was miraculously authorized. That detective being Inspector Gregson, of course. Quite an accomplishment for one man. That autopsy provided the vital clue needed to arrest the killer. And Mama was there for that historic event. What does this all mean? You know, that amazing autopsy happened right here in this very room. The professor and Clint von Zieks. They both spent their final moments before their burial on that dissection table there. So this lab, Mama's lab, was instrumental in some of the country's most important events. She really is proud of her mother. I wonder if you tell us more about exactly what happened back then, Dr. Gorey? The professor's execution was Mama's big first case. She had to be in attendance at Barclay Prison's execution chamber, and signed the certificate to confirm the convict's death. Mama's the best coroner in the world, you know. I was so proud of her. But the execution didn't actually take place. No, and worse still, Mama actually helped with the jailbreak. I didn't want to know. Oh dear, you found out recently, you mean? I believed in her, in Mama, but now I wonder if I'm starting down the same path as her. You mean because she omitted the time of death in this autopsy report? But that's because Lord Strongheart forbade you from including it. Just like Mama, I'm sure she was coerced by somebody too. Yes, that's my feeling as well. There's no doubt that there were powerful forces at play 10 years ago. The execution couldn't have been staged without a lot of people at the prison knowing about it. Obviously, the prison governor must have been in on it as well. The big man with the little handcuffs, according to what he told us, he was tricked by the chief warder. He says he knew nothing about it. Of course he said that. I'd say the same thing. Just who was behind that jailbreak after all those years ago? Or all those years ago? You mentioned the autopsy of Clint van Zieks. It was at a time when carrying out autopsies of murder victims was very unusual. It's still not a practice that's observed in our country even now. It turned out that he was the professor's final victim, and when the autopsy was performed, Mama was present, although only as the secondary assistant. The person leading the procedure was called Dr. John H. Wilson. That's right, my daddy. And there was one other person present, the primary assistant. He was a visiting student from the Far East. Jigoku? Wait, a visiting student? It must have been my father, Yujin Mikotoba. Oh, never mind. I had no idea Professor Mikotoba had been involved in something so important. But the outcome of that historic autopsy was the discovery of a vital piece of evidence that led to the capture of the professor. So that's how they came to identify Genshin Asogi as the infamous mass murderer. Do you happen to know anything about that piece of evidence? Can you tell us any more? Would you like to see the records for yourself? Well, would that be alright? What's the point of keeping records if people can't look at them? They're filed under a V at the back of those cupboards, with the other records from the last decade. Thank you. Let's see, Van Zieks. I need to say Van, because I'm pretty sure that's what they said in the cutscenes. That's strange. What, Mr. Naruhodo? They aren't here. There's nothing under Van Zieks. There must be. Perhaps somebody took them away? No one's allowed to take documents related to the professor case out of this room. But you're right, they're gone. Well, when was the last time somebody looked at them? Do you remember? It was... Oh yes, I remember now. It was 2 years ago. A consulting detective came one day saying that he'd like to see the records. No, you don't mean... Herlock Sholmes was his name. Deep down, I knew that was coming. Do you think he stole the records? Oh no, surely not. Iris, that can't be right, can it? Iris?
Is that what he pawned in the Baskervilles case?
Oh boy. Runo. I hope you don't mind, but... What is it, Iris? I've just remembered something very important I have to do. I'm going to have to leave you now. Oh, this is very sudden, Iris. Well, we'll come with you then. Oh no, there's no need. You and Runo take your time. Bye for now then, good luck. Yeah, that was bogus. Wait a minute, little girl. Yes? I remember now. You've been here before, haven't you? Have you, Iris?
With him.
Yes, 2 years ago when the detective came. You were with him, weren't you? You were a living specimen then, too. That's the way it usually works, yes? Was I? I really don't remember. Anyway, sorry, but I must dash. Wait, Iris. I'll brew up a pot for you when you get home. What's the matter with her? She's behaving really strangely all of a sudden. Well, in that case, we won't keep you any longer either. It's been quite a while since I had any visitors. This was really fun. The next time you come, I prefer it if you were ready for dissection. I can't make any promises, sorry. It's a bit strange that the records of Clint Van Zieks' autopsy have disappeared, but I think we've asked all we came to ask now. So, she knows something. Jones knows something.
Yeah, she probably stole them.
That's crazy. The thing is, she was shocked, and then she looked sad, and I'm really wondering, like...
Maybe she figured out it was her dad.
Crazy. Okay, so who's...
We need to go to Sholmes' place.
I did! Did you just see me do that? I literally just did that in front of you. Oh, no longer there. Anything else happening here, boys? Would you like me to bring some fish and chips? Oh! Police are still busily investigating in here, then. But Gina's nowhere to be seen. Where is she? Yes, it has been blissfully quiet, hasn't it? Perhaps she's out investigating on her own, practicing what her boss taught her. Well, I expect she'll be back before too long. Shall we wait? Actually...
That case is here.
Yeah, there's something different about this room since the last time we were here, isn't there? We could always use the time to investigate more thoroughly. Yes, let us look. I mean, I just thought it was one of their things. This little trunk wasn't here before, was it? Oh, it appears to be made of metal. It must be very heavy. I wonder to whom it belongs. There are some initials on the outside. Look, TG.
Tobias Briggs.
Let's ask one of the policemen if they know how it came to be here. Oi! What do you think you're doing? That's my trunk, that is. Hands off. Gina, where were you hiding? I don't know. You leave something unattended for a few seconds, and every Tom, Dick, and Harry's got his greedy eyes on it. Just a wild guess, Gina, but... What? Spit it out, Otto. Is it fair to say that you've only owned this trunk since this morning's trial? What? What are you trying to say? Come on, this trunk goes with me everywhere. Always has. Where have you been the last year? Try not to incur your wrath, mainly. You shouldn't hear them talking at the yard now. You should hear them talking at the yard now. They should be ashamed of themselves. They're saying that it was the boss who killed all of them. You mean the whole Reaper thing? Yeah. Apparently the boss was investigating stuff that no one else at the yard knew nothing about. Stuff to do with all them criminals what got off scot-free. Yes, the ones prosecuted by Lord Van Zeeks, who used bribery and corruption to evade conviction. Well then, obviously it was that bloomin' Reaper giving the orders, weren't it? But why would people be suspecting Inspector Gregson of being involved in the killings? There was a notebook hidden in his office. Oh no, this doesn't sound good. It had details about all the crimes that have been pegged as the Reaper's work. What? No, did you see it, Gina? Did you see that notebook? They wouldn't flamin' let me, 'cause I'm just an apprentice, apparently. But it was me who found it, and he was my boss. That's right. I was pretty miffed about it, so I sneaked a peek at what it said anyway. Oh, that's our Gina. I think we should go straight to the secret notebook. So you managed to see what was written in Gregson's secret notebook anyway, did you? The way I see it, it's my right to read what he wrote. And what had he written, Gina? Dates, times, places, names, an old long list of them. All details about the bloods are supposed to have been done in by the Reaper. But there could be an explanation for that. Perhaps it was a record of the Inspector's investigations into the Reaper's activities. Exactly, that's what I said. That's the first thing you'd think, right? As it happens, it was full of names I recognized anyway. Well, the Reaper's targets were almost exclusively known leaders of London's criminal underworld. Well, yeah, but there was one name right at the end that was a bit odd. The end of the list, you mean? I'm pretty sure the date against it was the 31st of October. Oh, the day before the Inspector was found dead. So, what was the odd name? It weren't like a name I've ever seen before. It was something like, Nah, it's no good. I can't remember it. I don't think it was an English name, put it that way. Oh dear. What a pity. There was something else, too. I don't know if it matters, but the same name kept coming up over and over. Shin it was.
Oh.
Don't suppose it means anything, but...
Azashin.
Yeah. Did you say Shin? But that's not the name that she was saying was from the Far East, right?
I think so, because that would be Azashin, but that's Giselle Brett.
Yeah. What? Does it mean something? Lord Van Zeeks knew the name too. He mentioned her as well. The woman who actually did the deeds. And now we find out her name appeared in Gregson's secret notebook. We haven't seen you for a little while, have we, Gina? Well, of course not. I've been busy, ain't I? Investigating that. The lads at the yard are trying to trace the boss's movement the day before it happened. The day before? That would be the undercover investigation into the Red-Headed League, then. Only the boss didn't go, did he? You found some cove would be pretend to be him, didn't you, Odo? Yes, it was Mr. Vigil who actually went to the park on Lime Street that day, posing as Gregson. Well, anyway, you ain't the only one turning stuff up. I've got my own ways of getting results. When me and me partner here get together, there's nothing we can't track down. Oh, little Toby, he's such a faithful friend. So have you tracked anything down, then? What do you think? Yeah, of course we have. Can't tell you, though. Police business, isn't it? Ugh. Anyway, the point is, if you lot ever need any help, you know who to turn to, right? Me and the Hellhound here. Right, because he looks oh so hellish honest. Gina, about your Hellhound there. Chief Inspector Toby, you mean? He's the pride of the force, he is. In Japanese, police dog means something quite different, not altogether nice to those involved in crime. But here in Britain, it's a wonderful compliment, it seems, for a canine at least. It should be, after all, in the great exhibition case the other day. It was Toby here who managed to locate Drebber's workshop. Maybe it's time for another demonstration of what this super dog can do, eh? Do we have something the Chief Inspector could cast a scent of, I wonder?
I don't know if it would be his wig or his watch. His key? His key or watch?
Trying to see if there's anything that says, oh, carries the scent of... Well, Chief Inspector Toby, who wouldn't mind having a stiff on this? He might be a little too keen, don't you think? Chief Inspector makes short work of Gina there. Woof! Ah, look what he's gone to. Oh my, that trunk clearly still has a very strong scent of Inspector Gregson. In other words, it must have belonged to him. I think we could have given her anything belonging to Gregson, like his identification, his wig. Alright, it's a fair cop, I suppose, and you nearly got away with it, too. You always talk so proudly of Chief Inspector Toby's nose and what it can achieve. Did it not cross your mind that he might identify something that was right next to us? Yeah, that was a bit of a bloomer, weren't it? That's enough now then, Gina. Eh? I think it's time you told us the truth about that trunk. It weren't like that. It just weren't. What are you talking about? I know what's going through that head of yours, but that ain't what happened. Alright, then what did happen? Well, like I said before, we were trying to trace the boss's movements. So I let Toby here have a whiff of the boss's overcoat, and as soon as I'd done that, he went off like a shot. Straight to that sandwich. To a sandwich, not to a bag of chips? Mr. Naruhodo, I believe Gina means the witness. Oh, I forgot about that I actually forgot his name was Sandwich, too. Yeah, he had it in between them wooden boards of his, the boss's trunk. You mean when they heard the sound like a gunshot and all piled in here? Exactly, he nabbed it from the scene.
Billigo took the watch.
Goodness. Me and the Chief Inspector gave that sandwich a good grilling, and you know what he said? I thought it might fetch a good price and the chap wouldn't be needing it anymore, so... But that's all I did, nothing more and nothing less. Would you Adam and Eve the cheek of it, eh? Stealing the dead boss's stuff to flog? So Miss Venus wasn't the only one to meddle with the scene of the crime, then. How could they? So anyway, that's how it... Oh, I don't think she meant how could they. I think she meant how could they? Anyway, that's how it happened. and it is a pretty decent trunk, so I figured I might as well make use of it. Is there something wrong with that? Well, maybe you and Mr. Sandwich should try to find the answer to that question together.
Okay.
Yeah, I think perhaps the trunk should be turned over to the police, don't you? What are you talking on about? I am the police. Gina, if you wouldn't mind, could we maybe examine it? Yeah, alright then. Do what you want with it. Thank you. We shall make a detailed record of our examination of the evidence. What's the matter with Toby? Why is he acting so aggressively toward me all of a sudden? Mr. Naruhodo, be careful. It must be the trunk.
Kudo.
The music! Toby, oi! What are you doing? You're gonna lick his face off. Mr. Naruhodo! Mr. Naruhodo! Gina, quickly, hail a carriage. That was quite intense music for that little cute dog.
Attacked.
Oh, Mr. Naruhodo, are you alright? Miss Susato. Ah, conscious again at last. A blessed relief, my dear fellow.
I'll pick with you, mister.
After all, to drop dead after a moderate licking by a small terrier, most unseemly. What is or isn't seemly is irrelevant here, Mr. Sholmes. Look at her sticking up for us. I'm so glad there's no lasting damage. How are you feeling? I'm fine, thank you. Did you bring me back here? Ah, what's this on my head? A bandage? Sadly, we had no ice, so that's a compress of sugar water. Sugar water? Don't worry, Mr. Naruhodo. It's a first aid treatment that my father taught me. Oh, thank you. So let us take tea when you're feeling up to it. But of course, no sugar in the patient's cup. The bump on my head is throbbing sweetly enough, don't worry. Hee hee. Whenever you feel ready, then. Whoops. Can we look at it now? Let's have a look inside. Look at this dark stain here, do you think? Yes, I'm afraid so. I think it's blood. Oh, I knew you were going to say that, so that presumably means that this was present at the scene when Inspector Gregson was killed. It's the most logical conclusion, yes. To think Gina's been carrying this around with her. If we didn't know any better, I suppose it does look like a grease stain from all the fish and chips. Have you seen this huge gash across the side of the trunk here? It's gone right through the leather and into the metal behind. Gosh, for a metal chest like this to have been so badly damaged, whatever made the gash must have struck the side of the trunk with considerable force. I wonder how it happened.
Is there a blade tip in there?
I don't see a blade tip yet.
No.
There's something inside. Oh, let's see. It appears to be a passport authorizing him to travel overseas. With Inspector Gregson about to go on a trip abroad, perhaps the date of departure might tell us something. That was... Oh! What is it? It's for travel on October 31st, just one day before the incident. What? Really? Gregson went to France the day before his body was discovered.
See if they're... Oh.
Yeah, I think that's part of the gash. Oh, wait, hold on. Do you see that? There's something stuck on the side of the trunk there. It's glinting. It looks like a fragment of metal of some sort, but it's wedged in so tightly I can't remove it. Well, don't cut yourself. You'd better leave it, I think. So we observed 3 things on this thing that we didn't write down. That's weird.
Was it written down?
Well, like, they didn't alter... Oh, has gash, and... Let's see the passport. Tobias Gregson, Port of Dunkirk, France, police business, permission for the applicant and one additional person to travel.
Ooh. just for Gina.
I wonder. Thank you.
Can you pause it for a second?
I mean, yeah, what the?
Is it broadcasting?
Oh, yeah.
Can you stop
Maybe.
for a second?
A sec. Thank you for your concerns, Mr. Sholmes. My dear fellow, think nothing of it. I must say I was quite startled. When I heard that you'd been attacked by a dog, for a moment I feared that infamous murderer of so many had come back from the dead. You mean the professor? Fortunately, I see your prized throat is unscathed. That stiff, turned-up collar of yours obviously afforded some welcome protection. Was I that close to death? All I really remember is the dog licking my face over and over and over again. Well, if you wish to avoid such troubles in future, a little mustard spread on the cheeks should do the trick. I should think that would balance the sweetness of your bandage rather splendidly.
You talked to them?
I just did.
I'm in. Okay. We have a bone to pick with Iris, too.
Mit dem Schwarzbiergebot brodelt Wien Feuerberg.
Is that Miko Toba Sr. with the mask on? What on earth is going on in here? Am I having a bad dream? Ah, no, it's an old German folk song. Rather a fine rendition, I think. That's the least of my concerns. Iris? Iris, what's the matter? Who is that sprawling, that relaxed gentleman over there? Iris? Is she even listening? Excuse me, sir. I do apologize for troubling you whilst you were singing so merrily, but would you be so kind enough to explain the situation? Well, that worked. A crooning gentleman and a mute young girl, a rather tantalizing juxtaposition. And one that appears to have incited the gods of deduction within me to find their voices too. I had a feeling. Mr. Sholmes, do you mean... The strains of reasoning within me are playing now as a delightful duet. One melody sings of a reunion full of nostalgia, whilst the other is a morose theme about the great secret you're trying so desperately to conceal, Iris. She's turned as white as a sheet. So as usual, you're instantly seen to the very heart of the matter. And by the time my own brief performance is over, I feel sure this gentleman's song will reach its finale. So then, to Musicland, where all is sweetness and delicacy and harmony. Pray do enjoy Herlock Sholmes' latest Logic and Reasoning Spectacular. Man's identity. Firstly, we consider the gentleman's nationality. Clearly he's a German with no grasp of the English language, as evidenced by the Germanic song he sings and his apparent inability to understand when asked to desist. So why is the man here at all, and in such apparently high spirits? The answer, of course, Iris, is clearly known to you. Indeed, we only need to follow your gaze of those bright young eyes to unravel that particular part of the mystery. The reason for the man's mildly irritating warbling is revealed by the herbal tea. You obviously offered our German guest a cup of your latest herbal blend. The tea's delectable flavor has made the man's spirits soar, and resulted in this joyful ditty tumbling incessantly from his lips. I eagerly await sampling the flavor myself, and I may join the fellow in a state of elation. Now to the next question. Who exactly is the gentleman availing himself so thoroughly on the Cité? As it happens, a number of years ago now, A certain gentleman of German origin engaged my services in solving a particularly delicate case. He required the retrieval of letters once sent to an acquaintance that might have proved problematic. In order to conceal his noble identity, he also arrived at my office in a mask. The gentleman's name was Wilhelm Gustrich Sigismunds von Ormstein. Haven't we heard that name before? The King of Germany.
Yeah, the kid is of no color.
Yes, that guy. If my memory serves, the mask worn by this gentleman is identical. Yes, there can be no question the mask belongs to the King of Germany. It would appear that His Majesty remembers the fine service I afforded him, and has decided to show his face again, mask and all, in order to express his gratitude. A well-mannered monarch indeed. Wouldn't you agree, my dear fellow? So the identity of this masked visitor is in fact my former client, the King of Germany. Indeed, his son is currently in London as well, enjoying the wonders of the Great Exhibition. That may be his worst deduction yet. It's like he's singing, even though he's clearly asleep and his mouth's not moving.
If she plays in Manitoba.
That's terrible. Which leaves us with one remaining imponderable. Yes, you, young Iris. But your apparently inexplicable silence is unable to hide the truth. Yes, the reason for your muteness is concealed inside that knapsack. A £5 note, I believe. I must say, as your compatriot, I'm deeply saddened. It would appear that you've allowed yourself to be bribed into silence by His Royal Highness, earning yourself some spending money in exchange for keeping quiet about the King's secret. And now the final piece of the puzzle. What is the secret you strive to hide with your silence, Iris? Ah, yes. We need only follow that brief, involuntary twitch of your eyes to find the answer. You attempted to abscond with that coffee cup. My favorite coffee cup, in fact. Or should I say the handle of my favorite coffee cup? It appears that His high-spirited highness broke it in the midst of his hijinks. Which leads us to the sad truth. My favorite coffee cup has been broken by the King of Germany, and Iris, you tried to conceal it from me. I shall have a bill sent via governmental channels to the German royal family for its replacement. Alright, time to see Susato's reaction. Thus concludes Sherlock Sholmes' great deduction of this painful puzzle. With your silence as well, the fellow's jovial warbling rather rings in the ears, does it not? Ha! Mr. Sholmes, I must say something does rather trouble me. Pray, Miss Susato, do tell. His Royal Highness doesn't appear to have moved a muscle since we arrived. Ah, and you haven't said a word either, Iris. If Mr. Sholmes has it all right, you might as well own up to it now. Your reasoning isn't entirely without substance, I must admit. And one other thing, Mr. Sholmes. Yet another grievance, Mr. Naruhodo, surely not. Well, I actually read the story of that case recently, the one you were just describing, and according to that at least, it wasn't the King of Germany, it was the King of Bohemia. Goodness, was it? Yes, that's quite true. Master Gotz, the prince, testified to that in court. In his words, I've come to see the great exhibition all the way from my home in Bohemia. I would ask you to keep that minor error to yourselves. It could easily become quite a scandal. I believe, Mr. Naruhodo, that it's our turn now to make some corrections. Yes, even Mr. Sholmes is willing to admit he might be slightly wide off the mark this time, although it's clear that Iris is definitely hiding something. We need to find out the truth. The one truth is incontrovertible. My favorite coffee cup is no more. So, shall we embark again on a joint presentation of Sherlock Sholmes' Logic and Reasoning Spectacular? Alright, he's German. Nice man here and in high spirits. And she's looking at the coffee cup, but no. Revealed by the herbal tea. Okay. So, what? It's some mix of herbs that gives you the urge to sing? Goodness, I should like to try some. And I'd like to hear your singing, but this man, just how long does he intend to keep up with that tune, do you suppose? As I said, he's been stock still the entire time, and if you look closely, his lips aren't moving either. Ah, so I'm not sure what's actually responsible for the spirited singing, but I suspect the answer lies at the end of Iris's gaze. Wait, this is a gramophone, still rarely seen in our own country. The sound certainly appears to be coming from the horn, but machine singing, that can't be right. Science and technology are changing the world rapidly, Mr. Naruhodo. What's right is changing too. It's too much for my brain. Well, at least we found our answer.
Take that!
The reason for the man's mildly irritating warbling is revealed by the gramophone. Indeed, for no well-bred gentleman would break into an obscure folk song while making a social call. In other words, this gentleman isn't singing at all. In fact, it would appear that the fellow is unconscious. The music seems to have stopped now. I asked you, Mr. Naruhodo. Yes. Why would I have purchased a recording of that gibberish? How should I know? Well, never mind. On with the deduction. Who exactly is this gentleman? As it happens, a number of years ago, a certain gentleman from Germany, who we just figured out was from Bohemia, is the guy. Although we've already established that it was actually the King of Bohemia, it seems Mr. Sholmes intends to persist with his Germany theory for some reason. Come to think of it, the young prince was wearing a mask as well, wasn't he? Master Gotz, the boy whom you had in tears. Don't remind me or anyone else. Do you suppose all members of the aristocracy of mainland Europe wear masks? I'm sure they do. Well, probably anyway. The point is that mask doesn't belong to any king. No, that's right, as we all well know. Because we can identify the true owner of that mask.
It's, Kazuma.
Yeah, Kazuma is the owner. Return to the question. Now, Kazuma's the owner, but that's not Kazuma, though.
It says who was wearing the mask before.
Okay.
That's who we're answering, right?
I guess so, yeah. Well,
Take that!
that mask belongs to... Okay. Yes, there can be no question. That belongs to Kazuma. In other words, my memory is sublimely unreliable. Only you could try to make that sound positive. Kazuma's mask has been languishing on this metal chest for several days, though that doesn't explain why the gentleman is wearing it now. But it is now a simple matter to determine our guest's true identity. After all, the gentleman is unconscious. We need only excuse ourselves in advance, gently lift the mask, and peer beneath. I don't believe it. Ah! Father. I'm afraid, Mr. Sato, you must be No! I think not, Mr. Sholmes. Then it would appear our logic and reasoning has once again revealed the truth. This mysterious visitor is my unconscious father, Eugen Mikotoba. Logic and reasoning are just looking insane. Which leaves us with one remaining imponderable. Yes, you, young Iris. So that's a £5 note poking out from Iris's knapsack, is it? Oh dear, I can't be sure. Most money that we encounter is in coin form. I know, I'm not even sure if we've seen any banknotes here in Britain at all, have we? But anyway, Father would never have paid money for Iris' silence. He certainly seems like the silent type himself, though, judging by his present state. There must be some other reason for Iris' silence, I suppose. Perhaps what Iris is trying so hard not to give away with her eyes is something entirely different. Really? Is that all I can go?
Let's see, there's one behind her.
This metal chest contains important documents, doesn't it? Yes, details of all the cases Mr. Sholmes has worked on over the years. Written up by Iris' father, if I'm remembering correctly. Iris insists that the chest is kept locked at all times. She's never once shown me inside. Well, its contents are invaluable to her, I suppose, and entirely replaceable. Look at it now. The catch is unlocked for once. Ah, so it is. That's hard to ignore. Very. I've never seen that chest unlocked before, and all the time we've been staying here at Baker Street. Okay.
Take that!
Yes, the reason for your muteness is concealed inside that metal chest. An excellent observation, for upon closer inspection there is something different about the chest's appearance. It's kept locked at all times, yet now the catch is open. Evidently, this has something to do with your refusal to speak, Iris. And it's a simple enough matter to incite you to speak, I'm sure. I merely need to open the chest. Here we go. No, Hurley, don't! What? Oh. Okay, well now we know what happened. Mr. Sholmes, Hurley. So Mikotoba was trying to get in there. He's dead. Never. Oh, Hurley, I told you not to open it. Ah, so you found your own voice now, Iris. In other words, what just happened clearly reveals the truth here. Yes, the real reason for your silence until now is... there's something different to the usual dance deduction you perform with Mr. Sholmes, isn't it? Well, he's left me alone on the ballroom floor, so I'm going to have to dance this next part solo. And anyway, I need to get to the bottom of this for my own peace of mind. Now then, Iris isn't usually a silent type, so... you mean you don't actually know the answer yet, despite that knowing point of finger? Miss Susato. Sometimes a man needs to point his finger first and think later. Oh, well, if you say so. I think we'd better examine Iris more closely and try to rescue the situation, then.
Want to see what's in her backpack? Oh, the key!
That's a key she's holding. I'm sure that wasn't in her hands before, was it? No, you're quite right. It's appeared as if by magic. That's strange. A big old iron key. Where did it materialize from?
Take that!
Yes, the real reason for your silence until now is that key behind your back. Ah. When Mr. Sholmes was thrown into the air before... just before you called up to try to stop him, you slipped something out of your mouth. That something is the key now in your hands. Don't let the key to the chest. You're so clever, Runo. So now it becomes clear, thanks to Mr. Sholmes' graphic demonstration, we can well imagine what happened here. But Professor Mikotoba also opened that metal chest only to be punched into the air and land sprawled on the settee. But wait, that doesn't explain all the facts. What about the stylish scarf and the cup of tea? And above all, why would he be wearing Kazuma-sama's mask? Well, for those curious details, I can think of only one explanation. Clearly an unbelievable miracle took place in this room. Isn't that right, Iris? Consider how the room was arranged before this whole painful experience took place. When Professor Mikotoba opened the chest completely unaware of what waited for him, the mask was flung into the air, just as he was, only to land neatly on his face, and the teacup's journey through the air ended when it caught on the unconscious professor's finger. You mean to say that the stylish scarf It's actually just a tablecloth. That is the great detective's office, after all, a place of miraculous deductions. Would you expect anything less? Yes, you're right. It happened exactly as you said. Brilliant, Runo. Thus concludes Rinosuke Naruhodo's great deduction of this punchy puzzle. So then, why don't I make a fresh pot of tea for us all?
Objection!
An admirable performance, Mr. Naruhodo. But in the final act of the show you rather missed everything of importance. Mr. Jones, if you would cast your mind back to my earlier deduction. Iris, clearly you're hiding a great secret. Ah, she is, from the look on her face. Mr. Sholmes must be right. Whatever that great secret is, the cat isn't out of the bag yet. So I put it to you again. You are attempting to abscond with that coffee cup? It really is a shame of Mr. Sholmes' cup. It must have been smashed when Professor Mikotoba opened the chest. Oh dear. So many things seem to have been broken here. But now that the deduction has taken a different direction, Iris doesn't seem to be trying to hide the broken cup anymore. In other words, her great secret is something else. Let's put our observational skills to work here one final time, then. Ah, look. There seems to be more papers there. Is Iris trying to hide them underneath the tray? The insignia, Mr. Naruhodo. It's an official Scotland Yard document. What? Well, why would Iris have... We must ask her. Official Scotland Yard document.
Take that!
You are attempting to abscond with that case file. Iris, as you know very well, nothing escaped the attention of the great detective. Oh no. We visited Scotland Yard's autopsy laboratory earlier today, and Dr. Gorey informed us that the autopsy report of Clint Van Zeeks had gone missing. Zeeks, yes, I do seem to recall that some years ago I asked to see the report in question. You were with me, weren't you, Iris? Forgive me. How did you steal it? In truth, I would like to have thought I could have predicted the booby-trapped chest. But it caught me completely off guard. I was very nearly the late consulting Detective Herlock Sholmes. I'm sorry, Hurley. So you mean this autopsy report really is... Yes, I took it from the lab, even though I knew it was very important. Was there something in it that troubled you, Iris? Not exactly something that troubled me. Something I've been looking for. When I saw this report, when I saw the writing on it, I knew it was Daddy's. The writing? Your father's writing? What do you really mean? Iris, it must be something that's hard for her to talk about. Forgive me for interrupting, my dear fellows. Mr. Sholmes, what is it? I feel as though the poor unconscious gentleman on the settee has been somewhat forgotten. Ah, Father. Perhaps we should find our guest somewhere more peaceful to rest. Mr. Naruhodo, yes. Would you be so kind as to lend him your bed? We must do our very best to make him comfortable, I feel. Oh, yes, of course. I'll help you carry him up. So will I. No, I can manage alone, thank you. You have tea to enjoy. We wouldn't want Iris's brew to stew. Because there's no better way to make the professor comfortable than dragging him upstairs like a trunk. I wonder, perhaps that was deliberate. Maybe Mr. Sholmes is making himself scarce to give Iris a chance to talk more freely. We must take this opportunity to talk with Iris and find out what's going on. Alright. Your daddy and the autopsy report.
And
Let's see what she's hiding. Would you like to tell us about it, Iris? About your father? I'm sure I told you before, didn't I? That Daddy used to be Hurley's partner.
that's not true.
Yes, and that notes about all the cases they solved together are kept inside that metal chest. That's right, Hurley told me, you see. He said that Daddy's somewhere far away now, so we can't meet. That's one way of describing it. Then, when I secretly unlocked the chest and read through the papers inside, I started to build up a picture in my head of what Daddy must be like. Well, that's only natural. You're just like any other girl of your age. I read that Daddy was a professor of medical science, so I studied and took my degree too. Well, that's only natural, I suppose. In that respect, you're not quite like any other girl of your age, though. But there was one thing that I could never find out. Daddy's name. Ah. His name wasn't anywhere on any of the notes that he'd made about his work with Hurley. But then one day... That's what happened, is it? When you saw this autopsy report, you finally managed to work it out, is that right? Yes. So it was the handwriting in the report that caught her eye. When I saw the writing on that report, I could hardly believe it. I know that handwriting, I thought to myself, because it was the same as the writing you'd seen on your father's case notes. Exactly. I was desperate to compare the two properly. I needed to see them side by side. I asked the doctor in the laboratory, but I was told I couldn't take the report away. And even worse, I was told that was the first and last time we'd be allowed even to look at it there. So you decided to steal it. When I compared the autopsy report with the case notes I had here, there was no doubt. The handwriting was exactly the same. It was Daddy's. And the signature of the coroner at the bottom of the autopsy report read Dr. John H. Wilson. So that's how I finally found out. I learned Daddy's name at last. I see. Ever since then, I've called myself Iris Wilson. And that's also when I had the brilliant idea of writing stories all about Daddy's exciting times with Hurley. I decided there and then that I'd write the adventures of Sherlock Sholmes. Oh, Iris, I had no idea the stories had quite such a deep personal significance for you. I can see why the autopsy report was so important to her now, and why she was prepared to break the law to get her hands on it. I must apologize, Iris. This is really all my fault. I made a promise, you see, that until the time was right, I'd keep the details about your father a secret. I know, I've been very naughty. I'll take the autopsy report back to Dr. Gorey and apologize, I promise. Yes, we'll go together, I think. Then, let me look after it for you until we get there.
You want to look at it?
Yeah. 33, British, May 31st between 9 and midnight. Death from a single stab wound to the heart. Other superficial external wounds indicative of a duel. Additional notes, recent scarlet ink stains visible on the little and ring fingers of the right hand, but no document in corresponding ink was found. Vital evidence recovered from the victim's stomach during autopsy. Credit to Inspector Gregson for petitioning so doggedly for the autopsy procedure. No internal trauma noted anywhere in the body. John H. Wilson. Still doesn't really say what the evidence is. I must go and water my herbs, I think. I'll see you all later, then. Poor Iris, she must be feeling awful. I know Mr. Sholmes is here for her, but still. What? How? What's the meaning of this, Mr. Sholmes? Mr. Sholmes? Oh dear me. So, you've noticed, I see. But that would mean... What on earth's the matter, Miss Usato? You've turned as white as a sheet. It's this autopsy report, Mr. Naruhodo, the one from 10 years ago. The writing isn't Dr. Wilson's at all. Huh? What do you mean? How could you possibly know that? Because I know this writing very well. This writing is my father's. What? Professor Mikotoba's? Indeed, it's true. And now you know, my dear fellows. No, I don't know anything. What on earth does it all mean, Mr. Sholmes? Because the idea that's slowly forming in my mind is just too extraordinary to believe. Please, you have to explain. Holy shiitake.
There's so much of... It's my dad. It's my dad. It's my dad.
I know!
It's my mom.
This whole investigation, day 2, is just nothing but revelations for all 2 games right now. How much have we learned about this case?
A lot.
So, this autopsy report was actually penned by Professor Mikotoba, then. But that makes no sense. It's not possible, surely. Not possible? My dear fellow. Pray, take a deep breath and think again. Yes, you're right. In some ways, it actually makes a great deal of sense. It does? 10 years ago is when Father returned to Japan after his extended study tour in Britain. And prior to his return where was Dr. Mikotoba engaged? Ah, of course. He was an assistant in Dr. Wilson's laboratory, learning about forensic science. And as an assistant, he would have aided with the dissection work, making detailed notes, which would be assembled into the full autopsy report. Once the work was complete, the head coroner would check the contents and put his signature on the document. In other words, the only writing of Dr. Wilson's in the report would be his signature at the end. I see, so Iris got the wrong end of the stick, you mean? She saw that and assumed the whole report had been written by Dr. John H. Wilson. Which is very understandable, of course. What a complicated situation. Okay. But I mean, I guess it's not a weird coincidence. Some of the stuff's kind of been told to us, but it's kind of, I don't know, laser focused now. Thinking about it, most of what we know about you, Mr. Sholmes, comes from the published stories of your exploits. Yes, the adventures of Herlock Sholmes written by Iris. And we really have no way of knowing what's fact and what's fiction. Most troubling for you, my dear fellow, I'm sure. So what about the supposed partner of yours? Does he really exist or not? Ah, you've come straight to the point, I see. And please come straight to the answer. I believe Iris explained it in one of her installments. It was a trusted comrade and the only person I could truly have called a friend. And did this partner of yours truly make a record of all your cases? Are his notes really stored inside that metal chest? Absolutely, my dear madame. Absolutely. So where's your partner now? We rarely meet. You see, he lives on the other side of the world. But if this autopsy report and the records of all your old cases were penned by the same hand, and if the autopsy report was written though not signed by your famous partner, there would only be one logical conclusion. Pray, impress me. Your partner would have to be Yujin Mikotoba. In other words, Miss Usato's father. Upon my word, Mr. Naruhodo. Yes? You are coming along wonderfully. You have hit upon the method at last. You finally grasped the art of deduction. You mean to say... Allow me to introduce you to my great friend and partner, Mikotoba. Professor Mikotoba. Does this mean that you're the real Dr. Wilson? No, my dear. I'm still my old self, Yujin Mikotoba, your father. Oh, of course. This is obviously too much for Susato-san to take in. I must say, though, how my old friend has attained worldwide celebrity as a great mystery solver is the greatest mystery of all. I still remember the first time we met. Ah, pray remind me. When was it again, Mikotoba? 16 years ago, Sholmes. Ah, yes, quite. 16 years ago. I just arrived from Japan with Sishiro and Genshin. I was in search of lodgings closer to the hospital, some comfortable rooms at a reasonable price. The rents are devilishly high in this particular area. That's right, so I decided I needed someone to share lodgings and the expense, and was fortunate enough to be introduced to Sholmes, who found himself in a similar situation. I was a callow fellow back then, a mere shadow of the great detective you see before you now. I was working at the hospital's chemical laboratory at the time, indulging my curiosities for a little game. And the situation of our cohabitation led to us pursuing cases together, you see. Hard to believe, it was a mere 6 years. We had many great adventures. But in the last year of Mikotoba's stay in Britain, that most infamous of cases presented itself. The case with which you become rather familiar yourselves, the Professor killings. After the trial, Sishiro and I were summoned back home. Hardly surprising given the circumstances. So there you have it, and as you know, all the details recorded by my trusty chronicler remain in that metal chest. It's interesting, too, because Watson, from the fiction I've seen, resembles Mikotoba somewhat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I'm pretty sure Watson is older, yet not quite as wise as Holmes, or Sherlock Holmes, the actual. Although here, I would say Mikotoba might actually be, I don't know. Sherlock is pretty observant, it's just that his deductions stink. Professor Mikotoba really is Mr. Sholmes' famous partner. Father? Goodness, my dear, what a cutting look. As your daughter, I'm very proud to learn that you are the great detective's great partner. But nevertheless, there's another mystery that I really must ask you to explain now. And that is... You know very well what it is. The unresolved matter of Iris' father. Ah, of course, I'd almost forgotten about that one. I should have seen this coming, I suppose. Iris told us that all the notes about the great detective's adventures that are in that metal chest were written by her father. Isn't that correct, Mr. Sholmes? That is indeed what I told young Iris. But if you're Mr. Sholmes' partner, Father, and you wrote all those case notes, then Iris' father must be you. Ah. Upon my word, Miss Susato. You are coming along wonderfully as well. You, too, have hit upon the method at last. You finally grasped the art of deduction. What? What you've always told me, Father, is that my mother died when I was born 16 years ago, and you left me in grandmother's care whilst you embarked on your study tour of Britain. And I've always accepted that, but all this about Iris... Ooh, there it is, Susato-san's ice-cold stare. No, now hold on a minute. It was very complicated. I mean, it's really not what you think. But perhaps you'd like to explain exactly what it is? There it is. Now the eyes go from ice-cold to red-hot just before she... No, really, you've got the wrong end of the stick. Show him. Say something, man. That's quite enough, my fiery fellows. Mr. Sholmes, when did he get all dressed up? Whilst I don't like to interrupt this exciting exploration of the past, Mikotoba and I have an urgent matter that requires a short excursion. But it's very late, Mr. Sholmes. Where must you go? Why, my dear madame, is that not obvious? My partner and I must pursue our natural enemies. So get your coat, Mikotoba. The game is afoot. Mr. Sholmes, I really must give Susato a full explanation, I think. Later, my dear fellow, later. Our carriage awaits downstairs already. You haven't changed one iota, have you? I mean, really, I visited our home for 10 long years. When I opened that chest in a fit of nostalgia, I quite inexplicably pass out. And as if that wasn't enough, when I eventually regained consciousness, I'm plunged straight into all this. Father, please, go with Mr. Sholmes now. But... I've no doubt that whatever happened, you were acting in everyone's best interests. I trust you completely. Susato... Suddenly, the great detective and his great partner off on renewed adventures together. It's more than I could have hoped for in my wildest dreams. Very well then, we'll speak again later. So, I believe your own work is done for the day. I wish you the best of luck for tomorrow. Yes, Naruhodo, good luck in battle, and in reaching a decision. A decision? Of whether to go back to Japan, I suppose.
So much happened that day that I barely knew what to do with myself. It would only be later that I'd come to realize how amidst the chaos I'd unleashed were all the clues I needed to finally unearth the truth, and that all the turmoil was necessary to give me the resolve to see everything through.
End.
So that's the end of that case?
That's the end of the case. I heard it ended abruptly.
Okay, yeah, because I was like, that just actually opened more questions
Yeah.
than answers.
Yeah, I had heard... Fortunately, nothing was spoiled, but I had heard that Case 4 ends abruptly, and I'm like, I wonder how. And when he started to speak there, I'm like, this must be where it ends. Like, there's no second-day trial immediately. But look, see? The last case starts on the trial. That's pretty nuts. I wonder if the last case is just the trial, then. Like, I can't imagine we do this trial, then we go do another case. Oh, boy. Well, next time, I highly doubt we're going to finish the next case next time we play. But I look forward to starting the trial. And so that must be why all this stuff just happened one after another. Because I think we're not going to be investigating anything in the fifth case. I think now we've established all our evidence, and we're going to answer everything. Giselle Bratz, the Reaper's true identity, all that stuff. And so I think that's what it is. It was just a whole, what's the phrase I'm looking for? It was just a whole marathon of revelations in this second day.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess this doesn't really need to be 5 cases then, but maybe just so you still have 5 cases, they split it. Or maybe the trial is going to be like a 3-part trial. You know, just boom, boom, boom. All right, well, there's a lot we're going to have to figure out next time.
Yes.
Hey! Until next